So as we enter this, the sixth turn, we only have one more after this, we find the Seljuks stripping troops off their castles in order to prepare for what looks like almost a multi-directional assaults on the Christian positions. Now, they really do need to make it to Cairo. So this force is probably heading in the Cairo direction. How it's going to get there, how easily it is to pass through. This is the more direct route, but they have to deal with Almeric there, which could be a problem. So I'm almost considering starting this here, but I still have to go by Almeric. It's going to be tough either way, so I don't see an easy route. These things take a 3 card to pass through. Maybe I'll have one. And then I could get down to here, and that would put me in position to attack. I think that's my best route, to tell you the truth, because I need to get and intervene in Cairo. That's more important than anything else. But the siege of Antioch is also important, and I've beefed things up on that side. Of course, I've got the problem here with Armenians in play, and with a full hand, that extra large force could move. Also, you know, there's no reason the Byzantines might not take a boat again. They don't have to have a boat card to do it. It's just risky. I don't remember what they need. It's either a 1 through 4 or a 5 or a 6. I'd have to look that up to see what the chances are. But if need be, they were very effective at helping turn the tide in Egypt. Maybe they can win it in a way that Almeric, although he's easier to move down there perhaps, really can't afford to abandon Jerusalem with a fairly large army in Damascus. I don't know. We'll see. And the turn opens up with the Christians making a hard choice, playing a 2-point card, Byzantine Intervention, which would allow Manuel and a bunch more Byzantine forces to show up in Constantinople. That's a nice card. If it was early in the game, it would definitely be valuable. It might still have been, but that's a long way to travel. And they activated Bohemond III to march him up to Antioch. However, the Muslims had Baron's Council of Caution, which prevents that from moving, thereby throwing things back into the Byzantines, or to the Christians' hands. Now they've got an interesting situation because they have things they want to do to get Cairo, but they also have to save Antioch early. And that's kind of where they feel where they're forced to play. But now the Muslims get to play, and maybe they can take Antioch before the Christians get another action. And indeed, Antioch falls. The Muslims were able to play something to drop the resistance factor to 0. And still, you got to fight, but there were very few troops there. The Christians counteracted with an epidemic. It had no effect whatsoever. We now see the cities fall, and they took 1 Seljuk loss, but captured Antioch. The points show that difference. Now, both sides really do need to focus on Cairo. The Muslims especially need to try to trigger that down, because now that they have Antioch, they have some padding points-wise. They can actually lose some territory, but they can't win without Cairo. And for the Christians, well, they have a mixed view. They can't win without Cairo either. But if they can stop the Muslim advance, that's good enough for them. So that's going to be their primary goal, I think. We're seeing these play-counter-plays taking place so often in this turn. The Christians decide to use the Genoese fleet sends aid to ship Constantine down into Egypt, grab Cairo. Again, not exactly what I said would happen, but it seems like an advantageous situation. But the Muslims can stop them with heavy rains. They can only move 2 spaces. Naval movement's canceled. That prevents the naval movement, but I can move the stack forward up here to Alexandretta, which isn't exactly where I want to be, but it's a port. It's good enough for now. The Muslims were able to push down and quickly drop a siege on Allah, but Elah, I don't know, and they were hoping to actually be able to convert it. That should be up 1. That's only at 0 before because of the capture of Antioch. Elmeric's response, and this was a troubling one because he could attack here, he could try to do something with Antioch, but it's to, or he could come down this way, but it was to charge across. He's going to try and handle the Egyptian issue himself. For the Muslims, having this fort here is just too valuable to just press on, because there's not that many cards. So if they can take that, they can use it as a launching point to make their attacks a lot easier. Their castle's fallen, and the Muslims have a decent number of cards, 3 left. At their speed, they could get in there, but you can see Almeric has also just pushed in, and he's ready to take the fight to the Fatimids right away. This is sort of a race-type situation. See if the Muslims are probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going to have to actually attack Almeric in order to prevent him from being able to take, not Cairo, but to win the Egyptian war for them. The Muslims won the battle, pushing Almeric back to Cairo, but that doesn't terribly help. Almeric can still charge down and engage in the way he wanted to. So it's kind of a weird situation. It was a major victory, but it doesn't mean that he can't get away. Oh, I forgot the pursuit table. Ho ho. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. +1. Okay. Let's do the die roll 2. Yeah, so we did 1 more casualty. We'll take in a Jerusalem unit. But yeah, that's still a pretty potent crusading force compared to what the Fatimids have. Almeric was successful in winning the Civil War. He picked up the entire force, marched down 1, 2, hit them. They didn't withdraw. They didn't want the risk of the reduced chances. They actually got away pretty well, retreated back to here, figuring field battles weren't bad. The numbers aren't good for them, though. So then we're at 1, 2, third move into here, another attack. They didn't try to withdraw again, and I think they should have. But then they were eliminated. The leader's gone. Egypt is now a pro-Christian country, and Almeric finished things off by moving into Atfi, just getting himself into a better position to face, well, whatever we have here under Shilka. But this is going to be a pretty difficult situation, I think, for the Muslims, unless they've held on to something they had in their hand. This card, Fickle Fatimids. You can, if the Fatimid Civil War is over, you may use the cards OV, I guess that's the numbers, to activate an army outside of Egypt. If that army enters Egypt and ends its move there, the Fatimids switch sides. Gain control of all Fatimid units and leaders. Any enemy units in a Fatimid hex are removed to the force pool or retreated into an adjacent empty space. Owner's choice. That means I gotta get out of Egypt in order to trigger this. So I've got this other card that I can use to pull back out. Well, for the Crusaders, there's not a lot they wanted to do, so they play this trouble in this 3-point card, run over and try to set up a siege in Damascus. The idea being, hey, maybe it'll last into next turn. It's a 1-pointer. Right now, we still need a fairly big city to get our victory points up. I'm actually 1 point behind, 1 for winning the Civil War, which I get to keep. And that would be, at 3 points, I think, enough to push them over. They need 26 or more, so that's not even going to be enough. They're going to need to take something else. Really, the loss of Antioch is pretty severe on them. Well, alright, but anyhow, we have this bit of nastiness now, and the OVs are used. We'll move in, and the Fatimids switch over. Almeric's going to fall back to Cairo. but that puts the Fatimids in the pro-Muslim position. And this is about the most intense place you can play this, because it doesn't work in the last turn of the game. And this is going to require the deck to be shuffled as well, which I'll put over here because of that. And that's the end of the movement on this turn. As we move into the final turn of the game, and the demobilization's been finished, we have Almeric camping out in Cairo with a couple of units, defending that against a potential Fatimid enemy, but it doesn't look like Cairo's likely to fall, especially with Almeric there to help defend it. I left Almeric there, and that's an expensive choice, because he's not going to really be able to help at Antioch. Elsewhere we can see the Christian forces have mainly been moved to the pool, including the Byzantine and some of the Armenians. The Seljuks pulled a lot off to the pool as well, trying to position themselves best to try to hang on to Antioch. They withdrew from here. They weren't going to have significant force. And now, if they want to take Cairo, using more than the Fatimids, which would pretty much be required, they're going to have to commit quite a bit of force. And that doesn't look too likely. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it. We'll see how this turns out after the pieces are put down and we start playing this, or we finish this one out. Okay, cards and troops are down for this, the 7th and final turn. As far as I can see, the Muslims' plan is to drive down. Hopefully they have a 3-point card so they can cut through here. If they don't, they're in trouble. Yeah, they have at least one. So they can cut through and then take another shot and try to take Cairo. And with that, well, maybe they can use the Fatimids to help them. At the same point, they've kind of strengthened Damascus and Aleppo and Antioch. Well, they can't strengthen Antioch, but they've positioned themselves so they can move forces to Antioch or maybe break a siege there. But as it stands right now, Cairo is their most important thing. If they can win Cairo, whether or not they hold Antioch, they'll win. The problem is, well, if they lose Antioch, could they lose two things? I don't think so. I think the Crusaders are in enough trouble. Now, the Crusaders had to kind of spend high to protect Jerusalem and Acre in terms of stripping their castles, but that's okay. Those aren't really worth anything in terms of victory points, except for Karak, which is worth 1. That's kind of at risk, but, well, with Antioch, unless Antioch is retaken, Karak's not really an issue here, right? Because they can't win if they don't have the points from Antioch and hold on to Cairo. And in fact, I think they need, well, no, they don't need one more point because they succeeded in the Civil War, so Damietta is not vital to them. So I'm just kind of looking at the balance there. If the Seljuks can take Cairo, they win without losing anything. If the Crusaders can hold Cairo and retake Antioch, they win. And that's kind of where we're sitting. Okay, so things start off with Bohemond swinging down, picking up the Tripoli forces, marching up through Antioch and laying siege to Antioch itself. For the Muslims, they played dispute over division of spoils or booty. The Christians, like the Orcs, would have lost 3 army units from Cairo, their entire army. But they're allowed to discard a card to make up for that. And in this case, well, we wanted to make up for all of that. So we discarded a big 3-point card. Now that's a movement of Thoris. I don't know how happy I am getting rid of that, but it has no siege events on it, so it's not that terrible. And that puts us over onto the Crusader turn. Crusaders were able to use Byzantine fleets to not only reduce the factor, but more importantly blockade the port. Lots of events modify that. And then, well, the Seljuks slipped down here into position to begin their strike against Cairo. Kind of turning out to be a little bit of a nail biter here. I don't know how likely Cairo is to fall. Almeric's probably going to just take that as a siege. Crusaders got kind of a lucky draw. They went for a random draw here. They got the Italian engineer. That causes an additional resistance factor loss for every card. They threw a card for random here. And it also allows them, when they choose Fortunes of War, which obviously they had to do, to draw 2 cards and pick the one they want, which makes it much, much more likely. Now that's really putting the screws on. But Antioch's not enough. Antioch's enough for the Crusaders to win if they hold everything. But Cairo is the key here. The game is over if the Seljuks take Cairo, unless the Crusaders can take something else, by my count. So, the fact that the Seljuks have moved up to Bilbais is very, very scary. And we have a quick counterplay going on in the Crusader turn. More troops for Cairo. Crusaders arrived. They would have shown up there, but Crusaders' delay prevents them from actually showing up. That would have been 2 new Crusade units, which would have been a powerful addition to Almeric's defenses. But it takes a card away from the Muslims. With a little luck, not only did Antioch fall, but the Crusaders have moved forward, or at least Bohemond and whoever's with him here, Raymond, and they tried to get Gaston to just surrender, but they're going to siege it instead. None of this matters. They're out of cards. But now for the Muslims, they have a single card they can play, and they can reduce this by 1. They could take a risk and draw, a card to see if they got something a little better. But now we're going to do a quick combat here. I think I did an example of the siege combat in the first one, so I don't want to actually play it out on video. I'll come back after the results, and then we'll see who won. So this was the face-off. The dead have already gone back. It was 2 dead for the Christians, 3 dead for the Seljuks. They don't take Cairo from that. Close roll, slight advantage for the Seljuks. The Christians had a +2 to their die roll, though, because of holding the city. The leaders are equivalent. Anyway, that's where we are. So as far as I can tell, the Christians won the game by holding Cairo and having enough points elsewhere. Am I sure? Yeah, well, my numbers are at 26. Did the Christians lose anything else? They gained the 1 victory point, which they didn't get from Damietta, because you need all of Egypt, or winning the Civil War is as good as Damietta. But other than that, I don't see any victory points which have changed hands. Some key little cities here. Belvoir went over. Is this a sustainable situation? Well, yeah, probably. It's going to be tough for the Seljuks to continue intervening in Egypt that much. But the way this plays out, this scenario, if you just played it forever, well, eventually the fickle Fatimids card would cause them to go Muslim, and the Muslims would eventually perhaps, have a card which allows them, if the Civil War is over, and I think we saw it, and they control the Fatimids, to lock them in as part of the Seljuk dynasty. That's the historical occurrence, basically, when the Seljuks just got sick of all the intriguing going on about Egypt. This was an interesting one. I think a little bit more luck. There's a lot of luck in this game overall, but a little bit more luck in it than most by that 1 card or 2 cards, and the goal being kind of a stretch goal, especially for the Seljuks to get to, and the fact that every time you set up and start winning here, you got to get out. So it's tough to see that it's going to be an easy thing to do. Of course, we have an ahistorical result here. When we get to the 3rd Crusade, we'll be playing with the historical for that again. That's life. All right, I don't know if I'm going to do the 3rd Crusade right away. I may do something kind of short in between. We'll see.